Good morning, good morning, good morning. How's the picture? The new camera. I don't like it. It keeps autofocusing. You see that? If I move, it autofocuses. So I'll be probably changing it out during this stream. All good though. All good. Hey, look, we're trying it out. If I could turn off that autofocus, I think it'd be a good camera. But how does it look though? That's kind of the question. I'm working hard to get rid of the pixelated J. Is this helping? Is it helping? Let me know, because on my side, I always see me clear. It's not until later that I get to see the stream. But boy, that autofocus is annoying. Good morning, Mayor of Alexandria. You are first. Also, how's my audio? It's a new mic as well. I want to try and get that audio level right. So tell me if I have to go up or down. Azaria, if you're there, up or down. Let me know, folks. I want to try and get this right. Good morning, Wayne. Really nice to see you, buddy. Thanks again for that interview. It's doing very well. And it didn't get taken down. And it didn't get a warning thing on it. So we did a good job on talking about the stuff that we needed to without triggering the penalty YouTube. So good job, Wayne. I'm not sure if that's going to happen with today's episode, though, because today's episode is pre-recorded. So I actually recorded it yesterday afternoon because Mark's not available in the morning. So I recorded yesterday afternoon, which really made for a long day for me because I ended up having to do like 2 videos yesterday. But that means I have a bit of a break this afternoon. Oh, that autofocus is annoying. During when I'm replaying Mark's interview, I'm going to swap out that camera. I get too distracted with that autofocus. But I would like to know how the quality is. Am I pixelated? Even though I'm autofocusing, am I pixelated? Let me know. Good morning, Juice Bud. Nice to see you. Oh, and you got a coffee. Clay is on a different shift this week. Or I'm not sure how many weeks he's on it, but he's on a different shift. That's why he's not here this morning. He does listen to the show after. He let me know via Discord that that's his case. So he didn't leave us. And Clay, if you're listening, hey, bud, I'm having a cup of coffee right now. I'm going to drink with juice. So nice. Thanks, Juice. Good morning, Ellen. My Nova Scotia, right? You live in Barrie, Nova Scotia. Is that correct, Ellen? Barrie, Nova Scotia. Can't find it on the map, but I'm pretty sure that's where you live. Keep looking for you. How are you doing, Ellen? How's the furnace? Is everything good? Have you back yet? Let us know how things are going. Looks like he's going to be another scorcher. It wasn't a scorcher this morning. We got some rain, overcast. I don't have my camera set up for the weather, but maybe this camera that likes autofocus will end up being the weather camera. But in either case, yeah, it's summer's coming. Summer's coming. And we had a lightning strike like right at the farm yesterday. No power outage, but we had a lightning strike right across the road. So close, in fact, we actually contacted our neighbors to make sure that everything was okay. And they just happened to be outside with the calves at the time when it hit, and everybody's fine. So we had some storms yesterday. Good morning, Jason, Paula, and everyone. Good morning, Motown. We'll figure out those details. And I am sensitive to your issue with the political concerns. So we do live in that world. But go ahead and let me know what will work for you. We do want to make this happen, Motown. And Ali is saying that everything sounds and looks good. Earworm. Oh, you're liking that song? Is that song working for you there, Ellen? It's to wake you up. It's to wake people up. It's a good message. Love. We need love. So I like it. And we also have a closing version today. So at the end of today's video, I'll close with an outro of it. It's the end of the song, so we can close. But yeah, I've worked hard with Ali, and he worked really hard to get these done. The show or the weather, because we have clouds and rain all day today. Yeah, both, Padge, Alan's saying. Yeah, and you got it, Barrie, Nova Scotia. Nova, Ontario. I like that even better. I like that even better. We need a free state. Is that going to be Nova Ontario? And we'll move to Barrie. I like it, Ellen. Oh, that autofocus. Image is still a little pixelated on the phone. Okay, so even though my internet is a 10 out of a 10, there's a couple more things that we're going to do to try and improve the internet, because there's some wireless connections involved with the Gen 2 of the Starlink. So we're getting the Ethernet adapter. That may help. But folks, we're doing everything we can, right down to, climbing up on sea cans and moving the dish around and making sure it's as good as it can get. So we're going to keep working for that. I believe when we move to OBS Studio, which is something we're working hard to do, it'll get even better because I'll be able to control the upload stream a lot more than I can now. So I'm working on it, folks. I really am. But thank you very much for showing up anyways. And then Wayne, thank you for your input, Padge. It's lovely to connect with people live. And she's a good one to connect to. I love this woman. She's awesome. And then Padge, no problem, Wayne. Always happy to hear from you from across the pond. Yeah, and it's also great to hear that you're doing well, Wayne. Very happy about that. Very happy about that. Well, folks, today we're not going to be able to really do questions and answers because it's recorded. It's recorded. And I hope you don't mind doing our best to try and get the people to you live, but sometimes they have schedules, conflict, and stuff like that. So it's more important to get them here. I would prefer to be live because then we can also do chats. But what I'll do throughout this particular video is I will be monitoring the chat a lot more because I'll be sitting here watching. So I'll put those up as well. So there'll be more chats that are applicable to what we're talking about coming up on the screen at the time, as opposed to a little bit later. But please continue to do the chats. We'll put them up. And there's 3 segments of about 20 minutes each. And in between each segment, I'll go ahead and chat with you a bit more because the interview with him is about an hour and 10. So there's going to be some more me to talk to fill up the rest of the time. But I hope you enjoy it. It was a good interview. I am a little bit worried because he certainly talks about things here that were no-nos not too long ago. So we'll see how well that goes. I did check the stream. We're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter, and we're on Facebook. So folks, if YouTube for whatever reason goes blank, please jump over to Rumble. We are there. You'll find me there. And continue. Okay. And then another comment from Ellen. It will be like POEC. Yeah, watching the recording together. Ellen, I really like you. I think you're one of the special people I got to meet during this journey. So I really appreciate you keep coming back and participating. I really, really do. All right, folks. Without further ado, let's go ahead and have this little video clip from Mark. All right, so let me pull up like what I had to do to get this to you. I'm trying to stay within a certain budget, and the particular application I'm using forces me to chop things up, and it has to be a certain size, under a certain size. And the good news is this particular video, these segments, they're kind of edited, only that we took out errors. There was some internet issues for Mark's side. He dropped a few times. And then there was some issue with audio at one point. You won't have to suffer through those. Those were taken out. But everything else is there. So there's nothing taken out of nothing removed that affected context, just technical hiccups and stuff like that. You don't need to sit through those again. But with all that said, enjoy this one. I am taking a risk. It could be an issue on YouTube, but I'm not going to run away from YouTube's desire to silence us. So please enjoy. This is Mark Friesen. He's the Grizzly Patriot on YouTube. He's quite active. He's got quite the opinion. He's very vocal. And there's a couple tidbits about him that I found were very, very impressive, especially about what he talks about and where he sources it from. So go ahead and see if you can pick up that, and we'll talk about that near the end.
Yeah, so it's been quite a journey for me. You know, I was a little bit in tune with Agenda 21 back in the day, late 90s. And then 9/11 happened, and that really woke me up. It really sort of inspired me to dig a little deeper, just to try to understand the world I'm living in. I had 3 young kids at the time, and I was pretty concerned with the world I was bringing them up in. So for me to feel comfortable in the world I'm in, I need to understand it. So I dove in pretty heavily into Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, as it is now in the present day, and all of the consequences associated with that agenda. And so I've been at this for well over 20 years. And it's interesting because the first 15 years, nobody was paying attention, nobody was listening, nobody cared. But
Hmm.
all of a sudden, since COVID, it seems a lot more people are waking up, and a lot more people want to be told the truth as to why is this world so crazy that we're in. And so, you know, I've done numerous speaking tours across the country, um, explaining to people, what Agenda 2030 really means, and sort of adding some historical context to it. It's an uphill battle, and it has been because since 1992, when Brian Mulroney, our conservative government in the day, signed on to Agenda 21 at the time, it wasn't like he came back to Canada and then tasked all of his MPs to go back to their constituents and inform them of this agenda that they committed to.
Hmm.
And in fact, they did the opposite, and they framed it as conspiracy theory, even though many of us knew that they had committed to this agenda, an agenda created by an unelected, unaccountable foreign entity that is developing policies, cookie cutter policies, for all nations around the world. And that has real world, real life consequences to people here in Canada. And so they framed it as conspiracy theory to dismiss and delegitimize people like myself who were raising the flag on this agenda and adding context to it. So it's been quite a journey for me. And, I was politically homeless for a number of years. I was a Reform Party member. That was the last party federally that I belonged to, and because I really liked what the Reform Party stood for.
Hmm.
However, in order for the Reform Party to get power, they merged with the Red Tories back in the day, and left me politically homeless and broke my heart, really. So I didn't have a party that I could call my own, even though I still voted for the lesser of the two evils, yet still evil, the Conservative Party.
Right.
But I was never a member because I knew what they were about. I knew what they stood for. And so, Mulroney signed this agenda in 1992. The Harper government made it law in 2008, which makes it binding in this country. And then he signed it again in September of 2015, a month before the election of Justin Trudeau, who, in an interview with the New York Times, referred to our nation as the first post national state and a country with no core identity. And the first part of that statement flew over most people's head because they really didn't understand or have any context as to what Agenda 2030 represented and the consequences therein. So I've made it my duty and my mission to educate as many people as absolutely possible through touring and town hall events in my province and in Alberta and BC and Manitoba and Northern Ontario, and it's sort of been my life's mission. And so I got into politics with the PPC when Max created the PPC. I didn't know Max very well at that time. I didn't know, what he was bringing to the table, so I was a little bit skeptical that he was coming out of the establishment. But I talked to some people. I had a debate with some friends that knew Max quite well leading up to him creating the PPC, and I liked what I heard, and I accepted what they had told me in terms of what Maxime Bernier represented. So it's an interesting story. So the first time I actually got to speak to Max was in a video conference that was held here in just outside of Saskatoon. And I asked him, my first question that I ever asked him was, "What's your position on Agenda 2030?" And his response at that time was he laughed. And I thought, okay, that's not really the response I was looking for.
Correct.
And it was a little frustrating to me because, here's a guy that was foreign affairs minister. You would think that he would have a pretty clear understanding of what Agenda 2030 means. But so, for about a year after that, I would keep lobbying Max to, let's be the party that stands against Agenda 2030, this agenda created by an unelected, unaccountable foreign entity. And so just before the 2019 election, he came to Saskatchewan for a tour, and I was driving him around the province. I had my hostage, and so it was interesting. We had a lot of good discussions, and then he was standing outside the truck on the phone, and he got back into the truck, and he said, Mark, everything is related to Agenda 2030. And I was like, I know. This is what I've been trying to tell you for the last year, how important this is, and how consequential and detrimental it is to our country. And so even in that, I was still a little frustrated. So I called my good friend Salim Mansour, who's a professor at Western University, professor of political science and history. And he's been railing against this agenda for many years as well. And I asked him, I said, how is it that a former foreign affairs minister like Maxime Bernier has no idea about, Agenda 2030 and its consequences? And he said to me, because, Mark, these MPs are not allowed to think for themselves. They're not independent. They're given a script almost every day of what they should say and what they can say within these establishment parties. And so that really sort of summed it up for me. And I've been working on Max, pretty heavily through my involvement in the PPC for years, even up till the last couple of days. I've been texting him and reinforcing this idea that we have to be this party. And we ended up creating policy that clearly opposes Agenda 2030 and what it represents. And so we are now the one federal party in this country that acknowledges the agenda, recognizes the consequences, and we're the party that stands against it. So that's sort of been my journey, and within that journey, I got into federal politics because I thought if we could change and get into the parliament and start pushing to oppose this agenda, then we could essentially cut the head off the snake nationally, and we'd be in good shape. Of course, that path has had some. It's been an uphill battle, and so I've sort of recoiled back into my province and how our province, and I'm encouraging other people in other provinces, political parties, to oppose this agenda from a provincial standpoint. And so now I'm part of a party called the Buffalo Party in Saskatchewan, and it's in our policy that we reject Agenda 2030 in full, and anything associated to this agenda, again created by an unelected, unaccountable foreign entity. And so that's really been my journey, and that's how I got into politics, because I believe that I have to get involved politically because of the platform that it creates for me. And like I said, for 15 years before I got involved, nobody was paying attention. And now when we do town hall events, every time we host a town hall event, it's packed because people are, it seems they're now ready to hear the truth and acknowledge, the consequences of this overall agenda. So that's my story in a nutshell.
It's a wonderful story, and a lot of people I'm sure can relate to it. Me myself as well. This is why I'm in it. I'm running as an independent. I chatted with the PPC party, and I want to get in there and do exactly that. Try and get into the machine and change things because I know that the agenda exists. It's been around for a long time. It gets
Yep.
renamed every 10 years or so, because their deadlines change and their agenda changes a bit. But it's the same group that we've been fighting for quite some time.
100%.
Now, we've been hearing about this, in our circles for a long time, but not really political figures, as you're pointing out. And then Max is starting to talk about it, and you got parties like the Buffalo Party talk about it. But not too long ago, during her campaigning to take the lead or win the leadership for the UCP, Danielle Smith was also talking about it. She didn't laugh in the same way. She laughed in that, "Why should they be here? I don't understand why they're here."
Yeah.
Do you feel a little bit better when politicians at that level are also starting to speak up out about it? And do you
Well,
think she really will do something about it?
yeah, she still has proofs in the pudding, and
Mhm.
as you said, she on a radio show, she used to talk about Agenda 2030 and the SDGs quite frequently, and I was impressed with her take on it, and her ability to conceptualize and acknowledge the existence of that agenda. But since she's been premier of Alberta, I have yet to hear her talk about Agenda 2030 or the SDGs. And I should clarify for people, SDGs is Sustainable Development Goals. There's 17 of them, and it's literally the Communist Manifesto on steroids. But so so I'm still waiting, and I'm still through social media encouraging and lobbying Danielle Smith to take a principled stand. If she's there for the best interest of Albertans, then now is the time to denounce Agenda 2030 and the SDGs and its consequences. And I've yet to hear her do that since she's been premier, unfortunately. Now,
Well,
you know, when I hear politicians denounce the World Economic Forum, it's important that people understand the context, because this agenda was first initialized or conceptualized in the late 60s.
uh-oh. Hey, Mark. My end, it looks like his connection dropped. Maybe he's talking about stuff that maybe we're not supposed to talk about. We'll give him a second or two for sure. We'll wait, stand by. Oh, looks like he might be coming back. We might be coming back, and we'll give him some time here. It could just be an internet connection on his part because it looks like he was mobile. But we'll give Mark a moment or two. And okay, so he's not back yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a video that he put on YouTube just several hours ago, which does kind of cover this as well. Oh, looks like you reconnected. So let's just hold on to that video for a moment, and we'll see if Mark does come back. I do see his stream is coming back, and we got good connection and lost. So I'll go ahead and play this video. It's only a couple minutes, but it's earlier today, Mark talking about media. And I thought it was pretty fitting given that we just had Andrew Lawton on and we had a very similar conversation. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and play this video while we wait for Mark to return from his connection issue. And now I need to push play. Oh, wait, there's Mark. So here's what we'll do. We'll go back to Mark. I
Sorry about
think I don't know. I don't think it was your fault. Maybe there was a plug or two pulled on you there, because
that.
you got right into it there.
Well, and so, as I was saying, so in 1971, they tapped Klaus Schwab to start the World Economic Forum. And really, the World Economic Forum is a support mechanism for the agenda. It's not the pinnacle of globalism, it's really a support mechanism. And that's Klaus Schwab's role as World Economic Forum. And so when I hear politicians denounce, the World Economic Forum, like Pierre Poilievre has done and Danielle Smith has done, that doesn't mean a lot to me, because the root of the problem is Agenda 2030, and that's what they need to denounce, and that's what they need to vehemently oppose on behalf of the people they represent. So I'm not terribly excited yet. I hope that she does come to the point where she can denounce that. I mean, in our own province here in Saskatchewan, Scott Moe, um, when he's been asked, and this has happened in a couple of town halls that he did, when he was patting himself on the back on a tour in Saskatchewan of what a wonderful job they did through COVID. people asked him what's his position on Agenda 2030 and sustainable development, and his response was very similar to when I asked Pierre Poilievre the same question, and that is, I don't know anything about it,
Mm-hmm.
which is complete hogwash, because if you look at Sask Party marketing, it's Sustainability Saskatchewan, and they're bringing in SOGI into our educational system, which is attached to this agenda, and all of the other issues related. It's their actions speak louder than their words in all of this, and you can just see that they're committed to this. So I'm hopeful that Danielle Smith comes out against this and denounces it. That would influence other provincial politicians and other provincial political parties as well. So Danielle Smith can really come out as a leader in all of this, and I hope that she does.
So a couple of the issues that I had with Danielle was when she was running as the party leader, she came out very strong against WEF. One question was asked about Agenda 2030, and she didn't laugh at it. She just laughed at the fact that WEF is even involved, and she didn't understand why they were. However, after when she won and she gave a bit of a speech about what she was going to do, just like most politicians do, the predecessor, they will make a comment about some of the work of the predecessor. And this is where my eyebrows went up because she said, Kenny did some good things, including the ESG score. So either she doesn't know what the ESG score is, or she is just kind of faking some of this because the ESG score is a social credit score for businesses. This is exactly
100%.
how businesses are being controlled. They don't get
Yes,
access to capital. They get problems in the media. They're controlled a whole bunch of different ways through this ESG score. So for Danielle
100%.
Smith to say, of all the things my predecessor did, the one that I identified as one of the better things was the ESG score. I'm like, oh no, Danielle. Either you don't know what it is, or you do, and we're in trouble. So which
Well,
one do you think it might be?
yeah, and I think, I think within our establishment politicians, and I consider Danielle to be establishment, I think there is a lot of ignorance, and there's a lot of fear, because when, as a politician, when you speak openly about Agenda 2030, ESGs, SDGs, the media will attack you. There's no
Mhm,
question about it, because the media is also part. There's an agreement. It's called the SDG Compact, and this is a media compact with the UN, where well over 250 media conglomerates around the world have agreed to parrot the narratives coming out of Agenda 2030, coming out of the UN. And so the media is all on board, especially in Canada, when they're all supported by tax dollars because our government buys them off. There's a lot of politicians that are scared of the media and scared of what the media will say about them. And if they happen to call them a conspiracy theorist, there's a there's a writer in Saskatoon, Star Phoenix. It was released today, um, basically suggesting that because Danielle Smith was elected in Alberta, she's in by default will be governing Saskatchewan because Scott Moe does everything that Danielle Smith does, and
mm.
but still implying, um, and pushing this narrative, um, uh, that Scott Moe hasn't addressed it or acknowledged Agenda 2030 openly because he's scared of what the media is going to call him when he does that,
Yes.
even though it's 100% legitimate. We know that this is a thing. Justin Trudeau talks about it all the time,
Hmm.
and
He's not.
so where's the fear? We need politicians. We need to elect people. We need to put people in these provincial legislatures that
Not scared to tell the people the truth. He knows it all, doesn't he? He knows about Agenda 2021. He knows about Agenda 2030. He knows when it started. It was under the Conservative government that we signed up for it. No government since has changed it. He knows his stuff. SDGs. He knows the ESG. Lots of letters out there, right? Meant to confuse you a bit. But we certainly jump into a lot more because we even go into his website. So good morning, Tammy. Thank you very much for joining us again. Looking forward to having you on the show. I think it's next week. Yeah, next Wednesday, the 7th. Are we already there? Yeah. So Tammy, I'm looking forward to that. And then Ellen's sharing some love right back to Tammy. And then Azario, welcome, buddy. So Azario, this is that new mic. Do I need to turn it up, down, do some gain on it? Not sure what to do. For everybody else, it's just one of these little tabletop ones. Because again, I'm trying to get you the best audio. And then what this allows me to do is to use the other mic, the one that you're used to, for guests. So when they come and Paula's here and other guests are here, there's at least a better mic for them to pick up on. And hey, Azario, ready for the heat today. So you guys are bunkering down over in Nova Ontario, Barrie, Nova Ontario. That's cool. That's cool. I guess he's a neighbor, Ellen. When he cut out, I thought to myself, Schwab's gone. Yeah, Ellen, it is hilarious. Later on, it's been cut out because I needed to squeeze the video down for size. But there was a time where he said Rockefeller, and every time he said Rockefeller, it died. It died. So it happened like twice, and then it took a while to come back. I chopped it out. Maybe I'll make it like a blooper thing, but it was funky. Every time he said Rockefeller, the connection died. First thing that went through my mind too, Ellen, is did they get him? Did they pull the plug? And it's kind of weird how we're wired that way now, right? Because we kind of do live in a world where maybe they are trying to silence him. I don't think so. Like I'm not that paranoid. But it's funny how that's one of the first thoughts that go through your mind. Well, maybe funny was the wrong word there, but it is one of the first thoughts that go through your mind when even if my connection goes down, it's like, what did he say? That's the world we live in right now. It's kind of sad. And Azario, Ellen. Oh, yeah, the AC is on since yesterday morning. Good stuff, man. You guys keep cool. And at least you're not complaining about our smoke anymore. So I guess that's good news. And then I, too, am looking forward to next week. Awesome, Tammy. And Azario's on as well. So, Azario, hope you're looking forward to it as well. I'll give you guys your time period. Azario and Tammy will be appearing at the same time. So we'll be getting an update from both of them. I'm really looking forward to that episode. I'm trying to get Manitoba covered. I may have it covered. I may not have it covered. Andrew, Pastor Andy, Pastor Adam. He is unavailable specifically that day because this is his wife's birthday and she gets to sleep in that day. And because for him to get on the video, as you guys learned, is an effort for his wife. She has to prepare that for him. So she's going to be sleeping in that day and then he'll be here the week after. But if you're in Manitoba, I haven't seen Prairie in a while, but if you're in Manitoba and you want to be on the show, reach out to me. Ali, I'm not sure what your question is. I think you dropped off, but Mark isn't joining. This is a replay day, recorded, and you know that. But I'll be playing the second segment shortly there, Ali. Thanks for checking in. All right, so we've caught up on all the questions. And then that buzzing you hear, I'm sorry, it bugs me too, but it does come from his phone. And during that segment, I changed cameras, as you can see. I no longer have the autofocus issue. Okay, to me, it looks a lot better than the other camera. So I'm really, really hoping that we can get this pixelation issue worked out. I've got nothing but 10 out of 10 on here, so hopefully it's getting better for you guys. But that audio issue is on his side. I can take it out. I'm no audio expert. And once it's in that file, not much I can do. So apologies that you have to listen to that, but it's slight. You'll get used to it. I'm sorry about that. Speaking of pastors, Arthur kind of blew a gasket on election day, eh? Yeah, I should look into that. Okay. I didn't spend enough time on that. I was quite tired that night. But Ellen, if you're a mod, go ahead and throw a link in. And then I can put it up during the second segment. Or between the second and third segment. All right. Well, with that said, let me go ahead and change my source here. And go ahead and put segment 2 on. Segment 2. All right. Enjoy. We get into it deeper. As each segment goes on, we get deeper and deeper. And I'm glad to see that it looks like we're still on YouTube. Let me double check. It says streaming. All right. Let's go ahead. Segment 2. Enjoy. Hear ye for sure. And that was just today. And we had Andrew Lawton on today. And
Yep.
same story. Yeah, he had the same story for mainstream media. And we can't trust it anymore. What you just said
No.
in that video should be on the 6 o'clock news. That should be breaking. Apologies. There's actually a video here that did get cut that I meant to play there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up that video because we're talking about it now. He did a video yesterday, and I went ahead and played it. So I'll have to play it for you so you can get that context. Where are you, my friend? There you are. How you doing, Mark? I like your page. So let me go ahead and pull that video up. Here we go. I gotta pause it. All right, folks, let me bring it to you now. Share screen, Mr. Mark. We'll share that screen. We'll full screen it. There we go. All right, so I'm going to play a video that he provided on his Twitter, and it's important for the context of this particular segment. So let's go ahead and put that on.
Folks, it's been a minute. Here's the thing. Media is still the enemy. I just read an article from Phil Tank, the Star Phoenix here in Saskatchewan. Needless to say, he's still promoting the narrative that early effective treatment protocols like IVM, HCQ, don't work. And they did work. In fact, because our governments chose not to utilize safe and effective treatment protocols backed by the media, cost a lot of lives in this country. An enormous amount of lives could have been saved if they would have only used proven effective treatment like IVM and HCQ. But they chose not to because they're beholden to big pharma. It's amazing to me that the media will not let go of this narrative. And Phil Tank was referring to Danielle Smith and how she considered and mentioned ivermectin and HCQ as effective treatments. And of course, Phil Tank says that that was conspiracy talk. The media is the enemy. All mainstream media are lying.
We agree with him, don't we? He's got it. All right, so that was a video that was played, and then here's our conversation about it. Hear ye for sure. And that was just today. And we had Andrew Lawton on today. And
Yep.
same story. Yeah, he had the same story for mainstream media. And we can't trust it anymore. What you just said in that video should be on the 6 o'clock news. That should be breaking news. We should be hearing the banners going crazy and, hey, this stuff works, and we should be using it. But yet we're not seeing it there. We're seeing it in a guy in his truck trying to get the message out. Why are we at that level now? Why are we at that point now? Is that by design, or did we just stop caring?
Well, it's a fact that, again, when I talk about the SDG Media Compact, they're all our media, all our mainstream is there as propagandists. They're there to push the narrative, again, of an unelected, unaccountable foreign entity. And that includes the World Health Organization.
Yeah, I have your website here. It is a very nice website. You've got the SDG stuff on here, and you're trying to get this out. You're trying to get this information out. Now, has any of this been taken down from any platforms?
No.
Can you go ahead and
Um,
talk a bit about what this is about for those who just
yeah.
listening to this?
So what we did is there was a group called Acres of Truth that contacted me, and they wanted me to take part in a project where we analyzed each one of the Sustainable Development Goals, so 1 through 17, and that's exactly what we did. And we discussed each one of the goals, each one of the consequences related to each one of those goals, and how it's going to affect your life. And at the end of the day, when we talk about the 17 goals of sustainable development, they literally affect all aspects of everybody's lives. They want to control everything. They want to control the land. They want to control the water. They want to control the resources. They want to control humanity. 15-minute cities, land use bylaws are all associated with this agenda. And so, we thought it was important to go through each one of these SDG goals and talk about them. And again, when it comes to people that are either awake or they're not awake, I find there's an enormous discrepancy between people that live in the city and people that live in rural communities. People that live in rural communities really have a pretty good grasp that there is an attack on their way of life.
Hmm.
People in the cities, it seems to me, are very distracted. They don't even talk to their neighbors hardly. Um, and so I'm seeing in rural Saskatchewan and rural Alberta, rural Manitoba, um, a real movement toward, like when we host these town hall events, mostly they're in rural Saskatchewan or rural areas, and people are very in tune with the agenda, how it's going to affect their lives, and they're really appreciative of people like myself who attend these town hall meetings and tell the people the truth that this is what this agenda represents. So when we talk about the media is not going to talk about this openly, because if they did, then the conversation would be started, and a lot more people would be paying attention to it in the cities, and that they don't want that. They don't want that. They don't want any of that. That's why we never hear any of this discussion on mainstream media.
Now, the distinction between the cities and the urban areas and whether or not they're paying attention to this, could this also be their lifestyle? So people out in the urban
Yes.
areas, we take care of ourselves. We know where the food comes from. We actually see it walking around. We see it growing.
Right.
But in this
Right.
in the cities, they don't. They go to the
No,
grocery store, and that's the magic
they're
place for
very
food.
very disconnected. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
So do
and
you
that's
think that
and
that
that's
kind of
very
hurts?
true. So rural Saskatchewan, I'll use as an example. People that live in rural Saskatchewan have a set of values: self-reliance, self-determination, independence, and community. That's how they survive, and they have for centuries. Rural people know how to work the land, produce food, and they're very self-reliant. And that is in particular the antidote. Those values is the antidote to globalism. And so
Right.
that's why they are the target. Their way of life is a target in all of this. And they're going to make it very difficult for people to resume living and working and living off the land. Um, and as they do that, their hope is that more and more people will just give up, maybe get bought off, have their land purchased, through groups like um, the big investment firm,
BlackRock.
BlackRock, and move to the cities, because in the cities people are much easier controlled than they are, out in rural Saskatchewan or rural Alberta or Manitoba or even BC. So there's definitely a push and an attack on rural municipalities, land use bylaws, and it all feeds into this, 15-minute cities where they can, and they want to control people. They want to control the behavior of humanity. They've stated numerous, speaking of, in particular, Dennis Meadows wrote the book Limits to Growth, where they say humanity is the enemy to the planet. And all of this stuff, if you look at all of the goals of sustainable development, it's all very contradictory. Like, for instance, they want to reduce CO2 because somehow CO2 is a pollutant. It isn't. It's a fundamental building block of all life on Earth. We could use more CO2 in the atmosphere. And there was a study that was done out of the Lancet a couple of years ago. It's still on the NASA website, where this increase in CO2 in the atmosphere is actually greening the planet. It's fertilizing the planet. And it proves that more CO2 is a good thing. But yet, built into that narrative, they want to reduce by 30% fertilizer usage, which in turn will only create mass starvation and famine around the world, because our food producers are handcuffed by these policies. And so all of these contradictions are built into this agenda, and they know this. All of this is a control mechanism, and a big part of the agenda is depopulation. That's a huge element to this agenda, and people need to recognize that. I have a pinned tweet on my Twitter from a guy by the name of Dennis Meadows. I played it for you on your show the other night, and it's really important to add context to how these people think and who was behind the creation of this agenda and the 17 goals of sustainable development.
Well, you know that video that they made where it says you will own nothing and be happy. In that video, all you're seeing are shots of city, drones coming down, people walking around. So clearly, they are trying to appeal to urban, and
Yeah.
that kind of makes me a little bit worried, because, well, where are we in this? Where are we in this future plan of yours? Do we even exist anymore? Is that actually
Well,
part of the plan?
Well, exactly, and Dennis Meadows says it very clearly in that 2-minute clip where, he suggests that the planet has to reduce its population by 6.5 billion people, down to 1 billion, and if we don't do that, then we have to live under a dictatorship through global governance. He's completely insane. Humanity has this really neat way. I'll let you play the clip and let him speak for himself.
Yeah, I thought we might as well bring it up because it
Yeah,
is
for
your
sure.
critique. Yeah, here we go. And right from the horse's mouth. Here we go.
Yep.
But in one way or another, we are so far, globally, we are so far above the population and the consumption levels which can be supported by this planet that I know in one way or another it's going to come back down. So I don't hope to avoid that. I hope that it can occur in a civil way, and I mean civil in a special way, peaceful. Peace doesn't mean that everybody's happy, but it means that conflict isn't solved through violence, through force, but rather in other ways. And so that's what I hope for. That we can, the planet can support something like 1 billion people, maybe 2 billion, depending on how much liberty and how much material consumption you want to have. If you want more liberty and more consumption, you have to have fewer people. And conversely, you can have more people. We could even have 8 or 9 billion probably if we have a very strong dictatorship, which is smart. Unfortunately, you never have smart dictatorships. They're always stupid. But if you had a smart dictatorship and a low standard of living, you can have it. But we want to have freedom and we want to have a high sentence, so we're going to have 1 billion people. And we're now at 7, so we have to get back down. I hope that this can be slow, relatively slow, and that it can be done in a way which is relatively equal, so that people share the experience, and you don't have a few rich, trying to force everybody else to deal with it. So those are my hopes. I mean, these are pretty pessimistic hopes, but that's what lies ahead.
Well, at least he wants to be equal about it.
Yeah, so we can all share the experience of the genocide of 6.5 billion people.
Yeah, that's so weird to hear. Like, how does he come up with a million or two? Like, wow, so you can double it according to these magic numbers of yours? Where did
Right,
they even come from?
right. Well, and,
Yeah.
and, and the thing is, humanity plays a role in the cycle of life. Humanity is obviously part of the cycle of life.
Hmm.
And this idea that us spewing CO2 in the atmosphere is somehow pollution or poison, that's complete hogwash. That's not science. This is what he's talking about is propaganda. He's talking about controlling humanity through all of these fear mechanisms and creating that fear. At the end of the day, humanity works very well with the cycle of life. We put CO2 into the atmosphere. Trees love that. They convert it to oxygen so we can breathe and survive on this planet. And the more vegetation, the bigger the vegetation, the bigger the plants with more CO2 in the atmosphere means more food for animals, which then in turn means more food for us. So we're all part of this life cycle. But they view humanity again as the enemy, and somehow we got to get back down to 1 billion people. Well, how are they going to achieve that? Well, they're going to do it in a number of different ways. They've been promoting abortion for
Hmm.
decades.
Hmm.
They're promoting euthanasia. Canada just killed 10,000 people using MAID in the last year. Um, they're using the trans movement and the LGBTQ supremacy movement to confuse our kids, so the kids aren't going to join necessarily traditional family values when they graduate. They're not going to create that nuclear family where they're procreating. They're going to
And they're
confuse the
sterilizing them as well, not just
yeah, and
confusing them, but
sterilizing them.
sterilizing them.
And then, of course, then you manufacture a virus that kills 6 million people around the world, and then you introduce a jab that is killing more people than the virus did.
And
And
affecting
and
reproductive cycles and reproductive abilities.
yes, 100%. And then you talk about CO2 and the reduction of this net zero idea.
Mhm.
Well, that only equates to more starvation, more famine, more death to humanity if we stop producing food in ways that we've innovated and are able to feed the world in countries like Canada, where we're really a breadbasket, and countries like the Ukraine. It's no wonder the Ukraine has been chosen to be the place of war in all of this. So, it's all connected. They know it, and it's damn time that our politicians start acknowledging the reality of this agenda and what it truly means to the rest of us.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, and that's why we definitely have to keep these kind of messages going, because who else is telling us this, and who else is aware of this? And
Well,
if you add,
so it's an interesting thing. When Pierre Poilievre was traipsing around the country trying to get the leadership of the Conservative Party, he made a stop in Saskatoon. I went to the meeting. I was hoping they would have a Q&A after. They didn't. So I had to pretend I wanted a picture with him and stood in line for 2 hours to get my opportunity to
ask a
film
question.
me asking him a question. I said to him, "You've denounced the World Economic Forum vehemently. You What's your position on Agenda 2030 and the SDGs?" And his answer was, "I haven't read them. I don't know what it is. And I have a policy. I don't comment on anything I don't know anything about," which is complete BS, because he's actually voted on the SDGs. He sat on committees approving the budgets for the SDGs. Um, and when we talk about budgeting, we talk about money. There was an organization in the UN that came together in 2012 trying to figure out the best way to raise funding for this agenda, because it's going to cost and have a budget of about $5 trillion annually. They were wrong. It's actually $8 trillion annually. And so they came up with the idea, let's tax CO2 outputs. So a carbon tax.
All the way
And
to the individual level, by the way. They were bragging about that.
Yes,
Able to track on
yes.
the individual level.
And carbon pricing and all of these schemes to do with reducing carbon and fining big emitters. Well, so when the conservatives run around saying that they're going to dump the carbon tax, they're still going to employ carbon pricing. They're going to fine big emitters, and those big emitters will then transfer that cost onto the consumers. So we're still paying a carbon tax. So all of this is one of the reasons that Pierre Poilievre denies knowing anything about the SDGs is because he leads the party who's responsible for committing us
Bringing it in.
to that agenda in 92 and 2015. And so he can't talk about it, because if he did, then he would be opening up his party to a whole lot of, opposition.
Well, it's quite possible that his policy not to speak about things he doesn't understand or know is valid, but he might vote on things he doesn't know.
Well,
I don't know what his
that could be
policy
true.
on voting is. So I
Yeah.
guess the trick is to get him to make a comment about something before the vote to find out whether
Well,
or not he
so,
knows what
you
he's talking
know, but again, in 2008, when the Harper government first created the first legislation governing this country in terms of the SDGs, they called it the Sustainability Act in 2008. It was the conservatives who pushed it through, and all of the conservative members voted in favor of it, which makes it binding.
Was it bipartisan too?
So they can't run from it, they can't hide from it. They are responsible for it. And so when Trudeau gets the reins in 2015 and refers to us as the first post-national state, that's what he's referring to. The ceding of our sovereignty to an unelected, unaccountable foreign entity who's creating cookie cutter policy for the planet. And we're all supposed to accept this. And it's, in Canada, it's interesting. We contribute 1.6% to global CO2 emissions. Yet, if you calculate the 389 billion trees that we have in this country, we quickly become carbon negative. And so
Right.
why are we on the world stage? Why are we paying a carbon tax? Because it's a funding mechanism. It has nothing to do with saving the planet. It's a funding mechanism. That's all it is. It's to convince people that you're saving the planet by paying a carbon tax. Well, how? Tell me how that works. Tell me how the science works around that. You can't, because the studies are out there showing more CO2 means more plant growth, more vegetation, which in turn equals to a cooler planet. Do they really want to cool the planet? No, they don't. They want to depopulate the planet.
Absolutely.
You're the carbon they want to eradicate.
So with the carbon stuff, they're going after our exhaled. They're going to be coming after our inhale, so air. They're going to be coming after our water, and then they're going to be blaming us for our waste. So all of the human functions, somehow or another, they're finding ways to tax it, charge us for it, and make us feel guilty for producing it.
Right.
That's incredible, because those are all the functions of life. So they're going
Yes.
after all the functions of life.
Right. I mean, once we get to 155 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere, all life on Earth begins to die.
So we'll get to that billion before you know it. At least it'll be equitable and fair.
Right? Exactly. With
Now,
all of these different mechanisms they have in place.
So the Georgia Guidestones, before they got blown up just the other year, they talked about 500,000. Is this
Yeah.
the same group, or is this something completely different?
I think that's something different. I think that was something I don't know. I base what I talk about on what I've heard them tell me.
Okay.
none of what I talk about is theory. Everything I talk about is what they have told us that they're going to do and what they want to do. So, um, I don't know what the Georgia Guidestones is. I can't say.
No, and I think that's a great answer because that kind of shows that you're not into the conspiracy side of things. You really
Right.
want to go with what they're showing and telling you, and
Yes.
what they're frankly are just bragging about. And
Yes.
that's what I agree. You definitely should listen when they do exactly that. When they write you a book, you buy it. Unfortunately, you have to support them a little bit, but you buy it and you read it because they're telling you what they're doing.
100%.
Uh,
And this whole COVID thing, people need to really understand and grasp. COVID was a mechanism that they used by design to instill fear in the West, where they could trample our rights and everybody would be on board. It's okay. We're all in this together. It's for the greater good. Uh, take the jab, accept the mask mandates, accept all of this complete nonsense. All this, it was a social engineering project, it was a conditioning project for what's yet to come. And they proved to themselves that they could convince the majority of the masses around the world.
I like him. I like Mark. And what I liked about him there is he was clear that he's not into the conspiracy side of things. He's not really getting his information sources from alternate media. And look, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that, looking into the Georgia's Guidestones and stuff like that is a bad thing. What I'm trying to highlight here is he wasn't even really aware of them. So he doesn't go down those rabbit holes. Where he spends his time is looking at the information they are sending us, providing us. So he's going to them for the source, which I think is a really good way to do that. If you're looking at their information, what they are saying, and you're disseminating it and you're analyzing it, that's a good way to do it. So I was really impressed that he did that, and that's runs his stuff. And when he didn't know much about the Georgia Guidestones, that really showed that he does keep his attention on the information that is being sourced by the globalists and not necessarily by any counter to the globalists as well. So I thought that was good. You like that guy, hey, Helen? Ellen, you like that guy? The 1 billion guy? Oh, the creepy way he talked. 1 billion, 2 billion can support. Based on what? Based on what? Like the evidence that the Earth can support far more than 1 billion is existing. We're here. His evidence doesn't exist. Completely made up. Coming out of a crazy mind. We used to ignore these people that would talk like that because they used to have a sign that says the world is ending, and they would walk around the street saying that. They dropped a sign and they went to the internet instead. Same people, same group. Nothing behind that. It's kind of creepy. And yeah, Ellen really didn't like that creepy guy at all. And my comment about the creepy guy was, yeah, he was so free with the 1 or 2 billion number. And I see that he considers himself part of the remaining because he's still here. My comment when I first watched that was, lead by example, my friend. Lead by example then. You want a fair system where we eliminate, what is it now? He wants 7 billion gone because we're at 8 now. This is just crazy people talk. But when crazy people talk and they have a platform and they are associated with particular groups, you should hear what they're saying. Ellen, so you did bring up the Pastor Pelosi's tweet. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to put it on the screen here because I do want to talk about it. For the people that are listening, I'm going to go ahead and read this. Understand, this is a tweet I'm reading from Pastor Arthur Pelosi, election night, his response. This is not my opinion. Great job, Alberta. The devil must be very proud. You have elected back into power the very people that raped you for the past 3 years. I'm not a fan of them using that word, but I see his point. They segregated you like monkeys in a zoo, muzzled you like dogs, injected you and your loved ones with harmful chemicals, destroyed your livelihoods and the inheritance of your children, attacked without mercy, churches, businesses, and restaurants that refuse to take the knee, arrested your clergymen for simply doing their job. He's right. He's like, all of this is right so far. Forbid you from visiting the sick and dying, murdered the elderly, are implementing 15-minute cities, forwarding net zero and bylaws for prohibiting growth of your own food. Still prosecute and persecute those that fought for your rights and freedoms. And you said you want more? Please abuse us more. You, good people of Alberta, are bent on destruction. You have chosen a government that murders innocent babies and uses your taxpayer money to do so. Perverts those children that survived, protects pedophiles and groomers, uses taxpayer money to fund every sexual deviancy that there is, marches on sodomites and calls it pride, marches with sodomites and calls it pride. You have chosen the devil over God, evil over what is good. Brace yourselves. The future is not looking bright. Put your helmet on. The ride is going to be very bumpy. For your so-called Christians, I have only this to say. Shame on you for selling Jesus Christ and his laws for a bowl of soup and a silver coin. That's a reference to the Bible. You have chosen your master. Meanie, Tiki Parson. I'm not even sure what the Tickle Parson. The rest of this, not much to point on here. So my response to this, I was pretty quick. Look, I like to support people who, push back on government. That's definitely what he's doing here. But I think he forgot. Like, respectfully, Pastor, Danielle Smith put her neck out for you and was punished dearly for it. And that was one of the two talking points, right? The conflict of interest that she got found guilty on. It was the result of her trying to find out what's going on with this guy, to assist him in any way she can, and that got her in trouble. I beg you to take care with false witness. So false witness is a sin, one of the 10 sins. And this is kind of what I believe he might be accidentally doing, is providing information that isn't fair and not right. Not accusing him of false witness, but it's certainly getting close to the line. And Alberta is where evil has the most resistance. God bless your spirit and heart. I don't know what he would prefer. What election result would he have preferred? Notley? Like, are you serious? She wanted to go door to door to vaccinate people. Danielle was the one that actually came out against Kenny too. So a lot of his complaints are very valid. That did happen. Some of it's federal, some of it's provincial, and some of it was the previous leadership. What did he want? What did he want, Notley? Oh my goodness, Pastor. All right, you had your say. We got to hear it or read it. But I subscribe to his intent. His intent is to expose the wrongdoers and to warn Albertans. I think he's getting quite emotional and a little bit misguided on where he's putting the blame. I think Alberta stood up to evil on that election night very, very vigorously. I think the UCP understood they made some mistakes, and that's why the leader is gone and was replaced. So, Mr. Pastor, I would love to know what outcome you would have preferred to have seen. There was no chance for a third party win, so it was NDP or UCP. Which one would you have preferred? One actually tried and put their neck out for you. The other one did not. Most certainly did not. They are the ones, and their ideology are the ones that are causing you all those headaches, my friend. So I understand your frustration, but I think it was a little bit misguided there. Oh, and Ellen liked that reply. Because that's kind of where I'm standing on this one. Like, come on, Pastor. What was the outcome you wanted? The Alberta prosperity? Like, love you, man, but you need to say a couple prayers and take a chill pill here. But I do love the fact that you're speaking out, even if I don't agree with what you have to say. The more important thing is getting your message out. So I do appreciate that part of it. Don't necessarily align and agree with most of what he said, though. Because I don't blame Danielle for it. And what would have been the other outcome? We would have had Notley. Notley absolutely would have gone after the children harder. She would have absolutely gone after the urban or rural harder. She absolutely would have been moving resources into the urban. She absolutely would have continued with 15-minute cities. She absolutely would have done every single thing you complained about. That would have been a lot worse. So Alberta is standing up to evil. It's clear to me. We're not perfect. We don't get it all right. Danielle's not perfect. She doesn't get it all right. There's definitely things we would love to see from her that we don't see, but certainly not Notley. All right, Pastor. So I'm glad you vented there, but you're definitely getting a lot of pushback. There is no support for your position on this one, because your alternative would have been even worse. So hope you had your say, and I hope you feel good about it. But yeah, I think you're losing support on that one, Pastor. But I prefer people that speak their mind instead of kowtowing to anybody else. So I respect him. I just don't agree with that one. And let me know what you think. Did you think he put the blame in the right spot? Do you think his vent has merit? Do you think that he's trying to change the needle? And if so, will he be successful with that? I don't know about most of that. I think it was a little bit misguided, more frustration. And he certainly wasn't showing his patience or understanding of the full situation, in my opinion. But let's go ahead and go with segment 3. We're about wrapping up here with Mark. There's 22 minutes left of his interview. What do you think so far? He's talking a lot about Agenda 30. He's talking a lot about how the government's complicit with it. He's talking a lot about how this is an old thing that's just been rebranded. And I think if you've been looking into the subject, he's not wrong. He's just simply not wrong. But let's go ahead and see what his third segment has for us, and then we'll be able to have a big chat. Go ahead and throw a bunch of stuff into the chat, and I'll go in and address it during or after the segment. But thank you, and here we go. Yeah, and they weren't even shy about it. They have websites about this stuff.
Right.
So the Global Fund is where we have been financially supporting this since at least 2001. Canada and many other countries. They just did a top up number 7, I believe, where they're going around collecting checks from big company or big countries, and they're not shy. They're telling you exactly what they're working on. If you read this was a compliance control mechanism, and we passed the test. It turns out that they're very happy with the result of the willingness to comply with very little information. And was I ever scared to read this? It's right here. If you look into it, even when a country like the UK didn't top up quick enough, these guys were all over the press talking about how the UK doesn't care about babies and mothers and AIDS and HIV and all that kind of stuff, because they use all of those buzzwords in this particular program. So they even guilt countries. Now, who are you when you actually have the power and it's successful at shaming at the country level just to get them to write you a check? You are not. You're not a nobody. you are a big group. And the Global Fund, we've been contributing as taxpayers since 2001. And as we just saw, and as we just saw, there are billions they put towards the response for COVID. Who elected these guys? Who said these were the experts? Nobody. They just simply collected a bunch of funds from countries and then contributed in this way, and we're supposed to just take it and we can't even criticize them.
Right. And we're on the brink of financial collapse in this country because of it.
Yeah, I think they keep us there because they keep us super scared of it, because at any moment we can have a collapse. And this is why they can get away with things like during the convoy, they can actually make a statement that says we were close to collapse. If that was closed down for too long, the faith and stability in the business environment of Canada will collapse. Well, what I said to that when I heard Christia testify to that, I said, okay, we'll let you justify that for the convoy. We now want to hold you up on the problem that you screwed up our books. You guys ran us into the ground so hard that even you're admitting now we're so close to the brink that we are super trouble if we close a bridge for a week. So now let's go tackle that admission by them that they've run us into that kind of financial instability.
Well, and it's and all by design, right? All of this is part of, again, Agenda 2030, redistribution of wealth. They want everybody to be equal, and that includes nation states. They want everyone to be equal. So how are they going to achieve that equity? Well, they're going to destroy the first world and bring us down to second and third world status and standard of living, right? And that's where we'll become equal, and will then be dependent on some global governance model that they're going to come in and they're going to save us. They're going to give us UBI for doing nothing,
Mhm.
achieving nothing. Well, when does the money run out? Who's earning anything?
Correct.
If
And they're
everyone's
sending
sitting
it
at
to
home,
everybody. So that's built in inflation.
it's all just so insane. But if we understand what their overall agenda is, and that is to burn it all down, and from the ashes comes this communist utopia, that's it. And this convergence of communism and fascism, people need to wrap their head around that as well. We're talking about two ideologies responsible for the deaths of hundreds of millions of people in the 20th century. Well, those two ideologies have converged to achieve the goals of sustainable development.
Hmm.
And so you have the UN, which is predominantly communist. Most of the people that head up all of the committees at the UN come out of Socialist International, including the the uh, the governor of the UN, um, straight out of Socialist International. Christiana Figueres, who played a big role in the IPCC, she came out of Socialist International, and so then you have that partnership between the UN, the communist side of things, and the World Economic Forum, which is the fascist side of things, where you get this private-public partnerships with multinational corporations, and they're agreeing to ESGs and everything else. And you wonder why there's so much corruption. You wonder why, you know, all of these multinational corporations have sold out. And then you look at COVID, and through COVID, how all of these multinationals reported record profits.
Hmm.
This is what they were promised would happen, and so they're given the keys to the planet, and they're making record profits while small business mom and pop shops were closing in droves across the country, right?
And
this
yeah,
is
and it's
this is how this is all going to, we're going back to feudalism, where there's an elite group who will continue living the way they live their lives, and there'll be the rest of us serfs that are slaves, and really have no rights, no freedoms, and that's exactly where they're taking us.
absolutely. And to prove this point a little bit more, we have a legal system we believe, right? We have this legal system that we believe. But when, for example, they rushed out the vaccines, well, they gave them immunity against any lawsuits that may be arising against it. When they were closing down bank accounts through the Convoy Emergency Act, they gave immunity to the banks from any repercussions. So, what is this legal system that we have? If they have this magic button where they can just say, "Oh well," in this case, that doesn't even apply to the legal
Well,
system that's there for
so
checks and balances.
the interesting thing in Canada is, you know, when the British handed over our Constitution, the BNA Act, back in the day, 1867,
Mhm.
it gave supremacy to Parliament. It gave supremacy to the provincial governments. The supremacy and sovereignty has never been given to the people in this country. Our Constitution doesn't mention the people once. Our Constitution doesn't reflect the will of the people like it does south of the border.
Mhm.
And that's a problem. And this is why, you know, all of these people that are fighting these tickets, myself included, I got 11 of them.
Yeah.
And as we fight through this, the fact of the matter is even within section 1 of our charter and rights and freedoms, where it puts the obligation on to the government to demonstrably justify limiting our rights and freedoms, not one of these governments has had to actually demonstrably justify limiting any of our rights and freedoms, because there's a judge, for example, in Saskatchewan at the King's Court, who declared that the government can do whatever they want because it was an emergency,
Right.
and so we can limit all these rights. So that's where we see this supremacy and sovereignty given to Parliament and given to provincial governments. It's not about the people. The people have no power. They have no recourse because of
Mhm.
section 1 and section 33 of our charter.
Yeah, you make a good point there. So section 1 is a notwithstanding clause. So
Yeah.
we start off with, hey, everything that applies after this, we can kind of not follow if we want to. So the very first thing out of ours is, hey, we can circumvent this.
Yep.
US is we the people. So their
Right.
first line is we the people.
Right.
Um, a little bit of a different mindset there. Um,
100%. And we
yeah,
and I'm a big proponent of constitutional reform, where we can add into the preamble, under the supremacy of God and the rule of law, derived by the will of the people. We can add that into our preamble. There's an amending formula that we can change this to reflect the will of the people, and actually have a constitution that mentions the people.
now I
We
believe
don't have
Danielle
that.
mentioned something along those lines where she talked about constitutional amendments.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Now, this could be maybe where she's headed with that?
Well, so within the amending formula, you need 50% support in each province. 7 provinces need to have 50% in order to amend the Constitution. And
Mhm.
so that's something the Buffalo Party of Saskatchewan has adopted, what's called the True North Declaration. And I encourage people to read it. It's on my website under Buffalo Freedom. But it's a mechanism where, again, you get 7 provinces at 50% support, so we can amend the Constitution again to reflect the will of the people, and then repeal Section 1 and Section 33 that give supremacy and sovereignty to the parliaments and to the provincial legislatures.
So the Buffalo Party of Saskatchewan is a provincial level party, right?
Yep.
You're not
Yep.
running federally with that one.
Right.
Do we have an equivalent in Alberta?
Not that I'm aware of. The Independence Party, when Archie Perlowski was elected leader, I was in direct conversations with Archer and Bob Leon and others,
Mhm.
and we were hopeful that they would be the party that reflects a lot of the same policies that the Buffalo Party in Saskatchewan does, but they imploded and they
Yeah.
kicked Archer Pulowski out. So I don't know of any entities in Alberta right now. I'm in discussion with political parties in Manitoba, Ontario, and in BC, and I'm hopeful that they'll come aboard and adopt this True North Declaration and start, obviously educating the people, because the people need to understand that our Constitution isn't worth the paper it's written on.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think part of the trouble in Alberta is we have such a fear of the NDP regaining power
Yeah,
that it's really tough to get another party going in
yeah,
Alberta. Yeah, it's tough. We might be able to get individual candidates if they're really good in, but it's
yeah.
gonna be tough to get a party going. Now, if the UCP, yeah, UCP does a good job, we may not need another party.
Well, part of the problem in Alberta too is, Calgary and Edmonton. That's 53% of the population of Alberta right there.
Hmm.
Whereas in Saskatchewan, we have Saskatoon and Regina.
It's reverse.
Everything outside of those 2 urban centers, I consider to be rural, and it's rural Saskatchewan that dictates who's going to get elected provincially. And so the Buffalo Party, I think, has a bit of an advantage because we're out there. We have the courage to tell people the truth. We have convictions on our values, and it reflects a lot of what rural Saskatchewan really wants. So we're working really hard to move that and move in the direction that we need to go.
So should the effort be on the cities then? So should we be trying to get the cities one candidate at a time and try and turn them into like swing cities where if we can get the city to swing one way, then we get a big advantage there. Because
Well, so
rural,
one
we're pretty set.
so one of the problems that I've seen in municipal politics is most municipalities use electronic voting machines, and we've seen in Saskatoon firsthand. A good friend of mine, Kevin Boychuk, is actually married to my cousin. He ran civilly, municipally in Saskatoon, and he was leading towards the end of the night in votes, and then all of a sudden, once they rammed everything into the electronic voting machines, he ended up losing by 50 votes.
Well,
So and there was a lot to be judged in regards to that. So that's that's a problem.
and we can look at Calgary for this last election. There were actually a lot of blue there. So some of the city has some blue stronghold. Some of the orange kind of spilled out to the west there, and I believe that riding is one of the ones that switched last minute. Um, they announced that it was UCP win. There was a speech, concession even, and then magically a bunch of votes showed up and it swapped. Now, it wasn't enough to swap the whole election, and God knows
Yep.
what actually happened there.
Yep.
And I'm sure they're going to go through that and take another look because
Well,
she thought she won.
when you talk about elections too, I even in the election I went in 2021, my campaign manager was at the riding office, and she literally watched Kevin Waugh, the Conservative candidate, and his team walk in with ballot boxes full of ballots. Now, why is his campaign team collecting ballot boxes from seniors' homes and delivering them to the riding office to be counted? How is that possible? That
So are
doesn't
we?
that
we don't-
that doesn't instill a lot of confidence in me.
so do we have any laws against ballot harvesting and stuff like that?
Yeah, I assume we do, but
Maybe we
um,
don't.
I don't know. It's
Yeah,
There's a lot of corruption out there, that's for sure.
yeah. And the mail-in ones, I know there was a real big push
That's a
here.
problem. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. No, thankfully, it still went the right way, in my opinion. So maybe we dodged a bullet there. So, do you think that Danielle, not only did she just win a majority and is pretty decisive, and we're going to go ahead with this, but do you think she was being held back at all before the election? Because she had a lot more bark than bite for those 7 months.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure Danielle out. I don't know what it is. I don't know if she's being pulled. A lot of what we see, even in the Saskatchewan party in Saskatchewan, the ruling party, they carry a lot of water for the federal Conservatives,
Hmm.
um, because these provincial parties, they want endorsement from Pierre Poilievre, they want endorsement from that the mother party, and so there is a lot of that going on. Uh, it's probably why Danielle Smith and Scott Moe haven't talked about, again, Agenda 2030 and the SDGs, because if they did talk about it, then everybody's focus would be on the Conservative Party for committing us to it in 92
Right.
2015. So there's no question they carry water for the federal Conservatives. There's no doubt in my mind.
When is the next provincial election for you?
For us, we think probably next spring. It doesn't have to be called until uh, next fall.
Oh,
The
so you'll
fall
have
of
it next year, though.
2024. Yeah, it'll be next
Okay.
year, either in the spring or in the fall, whenever they decide to call it. We're sort of assuming it's going to be called in the spring, but who knows?
Yeah, because I think Alberta's recovery plan is a three-step, 3-year plan. It's 2023, UCP wins. 2024, Trump wins. 2025, Pierre wins. And then we are recovering. What do you
Right.
think about that? If we can get conservative provincial, Trump is back in, and we have a conservative federal, oil will flow, gas will flow. Do you think we'll have a recovery?
Well, I'm not convinced that that's the case. If the Conservatives get power federally, they've committed to the Paris Accord, which is CO2 reduction. They've committed to net zero. Um,
2035, right?
yeah, and so I have a lot of concerns there. Pierre Poilievre was just recorded last week saying that they're moving toward green technology. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean you're moving away from oil and gas, the cheapest energy we have on the planet and the most abundant we have on the planet? It was the Rockefeller Foundation.
Oh, he said Rockefeller Foundation and then got cut off. Oh,
Sorry,
you're
it was the
back.
Rockefeller Foundation that
Yeah, every time you say Rockefeller
Sorry,
Foundation, your video goes. Third time's a charm.
Sorry,
That's
something's
okay.
going on here.
Stop saying Rockefeller.
They called it fossil fuels to give it the sense that there was scarcity in it. Really, there isn't scarcity. We have enough oil and natural gas, to keep us going for many years down the road. And I mean, there's plenty of deposits, oil deposits, throughout Canada and around the world. Again, it's the cheapest form of energy. What does green tech mean? Well, green tech means wind farms and solar panel farms. Well, what happens with solar panels? Solar panels kill everything underneath it, and they actually attract more heat to the surface of the earth. Is that something we really need or want? Is it reliable? No, it's not. It's been proven that it's not reliable.
Yeah, well, I think the future we need energy innovation. So going forward, we'll find different ways to get more energy out of oil, more energy out of gas, more energy out of a lot of things. And that's what I'd like to see Alberta take a lead on a global level, is to be an energy innovation producer. I think we have all those options available to us. Yeah, we keep losing his connection, but hopefully he comes back shortly. Oh, there he is. There he is.
All right, I got you back.
Oh, yeah, there you go. You go. So yeah, if we can work on energy innovation, which could include greener energy, or not greener, but cleaner energy, but it doesn't mean that that should be the focus. I don't think we should be focusing and changing our current system to go towards an unknown. But what we
Right,
can do is we can use innovation and learn along the way. We could have
100%.
cleaner, yeah, we have cleaner oil sands. We can have cleaner extraction, cleaner refinery. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But
100%.
that doesn't mean we should stop innovation in one sector and then focus all energy and resources towards an unknown
Right.
future. And I think Danielle feels that way too, because she definitely does want to see innovation take the front seat here instead of talking about an agenda. We should be
Yeah.
following innovation, not an agenda.
Yes.
And I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that.
Yep. 100%. And that's been humanity's role from the dawn of time.
Exactly.
Is we are creative, we're builders, we innovate, we invent to solve problems that Mother Nature gives to us. And we all play a role in this cycle of life. And let people be people, let people innovate and engineer and solve these problems. And we'll be fine.
Oh, for sure.
We
Maybe
don't need a dictatorship dictating to us policies that is only going to destroy humanity. We don't need that. We don't want it.
Yeah, they might forget how we used to heat homes and stuff. So back in London, back in the day, it used to be wood and coal, which meant there was a lot of respiratory problems and there was soot everywhere and it was a dirty time. But through innovation, through oils and gas, they were able to clean that up. So you have
Right.
cleaner burning oil, cleaner burning the gas,
Right.
and there was an innovation there. So we're
Sure.
just going to keep doing that until, well, forever. We're always going to continue to innovate on our energy.
Right. As we should.
Absolutely. And I'd like to see
Anyways, brother, I have to take off.
And that was that. He had to take off, and he had to take off. But thank you very much, Mark. That was a wonderful interview. You gave us so much information. I can see that we're still up on YouTube. So that's good news. That's good news. And I don't even see a little warning, a little blue bubble underneath about anything yet. So far, so good. Well, thank you very much, Mark, for that particular interview. I subscribe to a lot of things that he talks about there, and I learned a lot from him. We read the books. Okay, I showed it to Mark, but you guys, if you haven't read it yet, I actually tell me in the chat if you want an episode on this book, because I can go through it quickly and talk about it. It's a little bit outdated, but it was certainly an interesting read during the beginning of COVID. And Brenda absolutely agrees with Mark as well. He does talk facts, and thank you for having awesome guests. You're welcome, Brenda. And if there's anybody that you want to see, hit me up. I have no shame. I'll ask anybody. I've asked the premier. I'll ask anybody. I'm trying to get Jordan Peterson. I'll ask anybody to come on the show. So if there's anybody that you would like to see, let me know. And Ellen, maybe we should ask Pastor Arthur, to come on. Would you watch that? Did you watch Pastor Arthur explain where he's coming from? I have no problem talking to people that don't agree with me, or say, extreme things, as long as it's non-violent and it's not a call for, anything illegal. But yeah, I would have him on. Would you like to see him? I think we would. And you're not wrong here, Ellen. There is merit to be found in his words for sure, because a lot of those lines are very applicable. I think he's just pointing fingers where it's unnecessary and unproductive. It should be, let's focus on that issue and the cause of that issue and stop blaming the results of an election on that one. I think, Pastor, we dodged a big bullet there. It's too bad that you're so angry you don't see it, but I understand where that anger comes from, Pastor. It is counterproductive to dishearten people who have been struggling to get out from under the boot of an overbearing government. This is where we agree completely, Ellen, because I think his message has some merit behind it. I do think he's putting the finger in the wrong spot, but the more important thing here is, you're disheartening people. What we want to do is wake people up, energize people, give them the strength and confidence to go stand up for what they believe in. So messages like this don't help. It don't help. But I do hear his pain. I think that came clearly out of his message there, Ellen. He's angry, he's hurt, and he's very scared. And he should, frankly. The legal system here let him down. And I think it was probably a big eye-opener for him to see how Danielle even got her hand slapped by trying to assist. But I think he's blaming the wrong person. He's actually blaming Albertans, okay? He's not blaming Danielle. He's blaming Albertans. So he's definitely blaming the wrong people. King Charles is behind the whole thing, according to Eleanor, globally, and we will bow to the plan. What can the people do now that illegal immigration has allowed for more paid for votes? Eleanor. Yeah. Yep. He's on the green bandwagon. He's definitely all for taking care of his children. And I don't mean the biological ones. I mean, he sees us as children. We are children. We've always been children to this gentleman. God save the king. Okay. I think the next generation king may be a little bit, I don't know. Actually, I don't know. I don't know where William would go with this if he had the power. I don't know. He cuts off ties with his brother because they argue about relationships that each other's are in. So I don't know where William would go with this. He doesn't seem to be mature just yet. Maybe it's time for 1776 Canada version. Maybe we should be filling up the harbors with maple syrup. Maybe we should have our own Boston Tea Party. There's a lot of talk around Canada's version of 1776. I don't mean it necessarily needs to be a violent revolt against, our neighbors, but maybe it's time to check out of that Commonwealth thing. Maybe it's time. We'll put that out there. Wayne lives in the UK, and he says, sadly, Charles is just a puppet to the whole agenda. So, that's a countryman. Wayne is in the UK. He's under the rule and the laws of the UK, and he sees it daily. And he does agree that maybe Charles has, a hidden agenda that he's been sitting on for quite some time. I know his dad, Prince Philip, was very, very, very active when it came to things like eugenics, even. So, apple far from the tree, maybe here. I'm not sure. But we certainly need to keep an eye on him, right, Wayne? And then Eleanor, Charles heads the churches. Yeah. The bankers and the military, not a puppet. So are you not a puppet? But he certainly has a lot of strings on those old fingers of his. And it would be cool if the UK, well, maybe not the UK just yet, but at least Canada said thanks, but no thanks. And we start putting, beavers and moose on our bills instead of monkeys. But any day now, we're going to be getting that new cash in Canada that has his face on it. So that might be the last picture we have on physical cash before we're ushered into digital cash. So it might be his smiley face that we see for the last time on our physical bills. It'd be weird. It would be weird. I am asking you guys, if you can, to go ahead and vote on a poll I just put up, okay? The Twitter link's in there, and what I'll do is I'll pull it up here. Because what I'm doing is I'm a numbers guy, right? I'm a data guy. I'm a nerd. So when I am looking at the numbers, it's kind of clear that it's tough to get an audience early morning. But my show for the election coverage did 20 times the audience, like way more. That could be because there's election coverage and special, but it also could be because when I'm doing my videos. So I've gone ahead and put a poll up. If you can go ahead and take a peek at it and give me your vote. I'm looking to find out, when do you guys want these shows? And this poll's only been up for a couple minutes, and already not a single vote for when we currently have the show. So the indicators might be pretty flat. We may change the time of the show, and I'm not averse to that. I'm totally cool with adjusting as we are learning this. So if it is your preference to have a later show in the day, I will certainly look at that. That's why I'm asking this question. So everyone in my audience, please go ahead and jump onto Twitter and hit your vote. And if you're not on Twitter, go ahead and put your vote in the chat, and I will consider it as well. But my goal, just so you're aware, why I did the early morning one, was to free up the rest of my day. However, I don't mind ending my day with a show, because it's looking like the evening one is getting quite a few votes here. So if what we end up doing is just moving it from a morning show to an evening show, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. So if that's what you want, go ahead and throw it into the chat, because I really, really do want to make sure that you guys get the best show possible and you get the show you want. So this is what the poll's for. So please take a moment and go ahead and throw a vote in there and let me know which way you'd like me to go on this. But looking at the numbers, the evening show had quite the draw. And it would still be live interviews like we're doing now. It's just we would change the time by, well, it appears by 12 hours because it looks like 6 p.m. is quite popular. But let's go ahead and, be a little democratic today. Let me know what you guys think. And I'm not above making changes, as you know. So if the right move is to see you guys at night and then say good night instead of good morning, I'm fine with that too. What's another comment here? One of the senior Rothschilds. Oh, gotta be careful with those words, because as you saw with the video, every time you said Rockefeller or Rothschild, he had dropped, right? Ellen, we were talking about that at the beginning of the show. Wasn't that weird? How it was dropping at those point stations. Purely coincidental. That's where I'm going to put my mind on that one. But Wayne makes a point here. One of the senior Rothschilds was talking to Charles in a meeting somewhere, and he poked him hard in the chest, giving you the idea of where the power truly lies. I'm sure he takes his orders too. Yeah, we saw that with Trudeau as well, with his real master in China, right? He was scolded, talked down to, yelled at in front of cameras. So there's very little or no fear on Trudeau's daddy there. And for those of you keeping count, it would be his third father, right? He has a biological father. He has a father, what you want to call, he took him in, so he was a good foster father, and now he's got this third Chinese-based father. Eleanor, here we go. That image is not the be-all of what's going on. I could show the threads, but it would take a bit of explanation. I'm sorry, Eleanor, I'm not sure what we're referring to here now. I'll go back a bit, but you might have been referring to something that we saw in the video. My apologies for missing that one. If you can go ahead and put in the chat, we have time, so I can come back to that. Okay, I personally like this time frame, my coffee time. Yeah, me too. But so far, nobody's voted for 6 a.m. Nobody's voted for 6 a.m. I personally do like it as well. I'm an early bird. I'm up at 4. I like getting things done. So one of the first things I do is the show. Maybe we'll have a special one, Brenda. Maybe a small little good morning. But the main show with the interviews and stuff will be later in the day. Maybe a little show in the morning that says good morning to wake you up and have a quick coffee, just to set you up for the day. But then the main 2-hour shows later in the day. Let me know what you think. Brenda. I really like that you keep coming back. So I do want to accommodate as many viewers as possible. But I think maybe a nice little quick, 30-minute morning coffee and then the show in the evening. Discuss the book sounds like a good idea, Jason. So much of it hasn't been discussed previously. Yeah, okay, yeah. Let me think how I want to do that episode, whether or not it'll be a guest you think Schwab himself would show up? Whether or not to be a guest, or we just go through like high-level chapters. But let me think about that one, Wayne. I've been thinking about this book for a while, and yeah, people haven't looked at it. It's right there. Eleanor, it's too early to get into any deep discussions, in my opinion. See, yeah, look, like I want to get the voice and the message out. That's why I'm doing this every single day. That's why I work hard every single day. But I want to make sure it gets out, right? So if I'm too early for people, then yeah, please let me know. Do hit that vote. It's certainly looking like an evening show, is what people are saying here. And then Brenda. I'm in Ontario, so there is the time difference. Yeah, I was trying to aim for an early morning drive show for people in the GTA. I have lots and lots and lots of viewers from the Ontario area, so the GTA area. So I was trying to be the show that you would listen to as you drive forever in the GTA. But it might be too early. So maybe something small and short and sweet with Brenda and I, but for most people, it could be evening. But do let me know. I do appreciate that you are responding, Brenda. And Schwab in person to discuss his book. Sounds like a great idea. Yeah, my channel might get reset if I did that, right? Again, I'm not afraid to talk to anybody. Highly doubt I would get a response, but why not? Let's see. Maybe he would come on with his black outfit and talk about the penetration of the cabinets of Trudeau, and maybe tell me about his frustration with Daniela's not listening to us. We really want to take Alberta. We got to the oil and the freedom there. Maybe we'll get some opinions from him on what he actually thinks. But could you imagine? Could you imagine? I think I have a better chance of getting a good deep fake of him on than him. But I wouldn't do that. I'm not for the mis, dis, or mal information. And for those of you that don't know what malinformation is, we kind of learned that from Andrew Lawton yesterday. So misinformation is information that's incorrect. Disinformation is information that's incorrect on purpose. So you're trying to do something. Malinformation is when you intentionally leave out context to change the meaning, but it's not technically mis or dis. It's something else. So malinformation is a new term that's been floated around according to Andrew, and I think it's quite fitting. Whether it's malicious or malignant or some other type of mal, I think it's fitting because it's not mis or dis when CBC carefully edits the context so that technically what they're saying is true. For example, Tom Marazzo was talking about how they couldn't move the trucks because the barriers were there during the POEC. But the CBC reported that the leader of the convoy admits to not moving trucks. But when his statement was, we did not move the trucks because the barriers were still there. The article was, we did not move the trucks, as a quote from him. So technically speaking, that is accurate, but it's context manipulated. So that's another type. So malinformation. And then Eleanor would love to see Schwab on here. It might be my last show if that ever happened, right? But hey, let me go ahead and send the message out. I would be surprised. And I wonder if he's a morning bird or not. Guess we can find out. I get it. I'll watch your show when you have the most viewers. Brenda, I still kind of like the morning one, though. I do. I still kind of like the morning one. I like getting up. I like getting productive. I like having it done. But an evening show would allow me to, throughout the day, prep for it instead of the day before. But let's go ahead and vote. The votes are pretty strong right now for an evening show. But we'll keep an eye on that. Okay, Brenda? What's this? No, then don't do it. LOL. Having Schwab on? Alberta is very freedom, and that makes me very upset. By the way, I think his 2030 deadline that he set for him and his followers is his desire to be retired by that time. It has nothing to do with the globe. It has nothing to do with climate change. It has everything to do with the fact that he's getting old and he's going to retire and he wants to have his mission completed. That's the way these minds work. So it's an artificial deadline based on an old man, 2030. That's my opinion. But prove me wrong there, Schwab. Go ahead. I'm on here. You know where I am. maybe. And then Ellen, sorry, had my hands full of eggs. Never apologize. Never apologize. How many eggs do you get each day on average, by the way? Because we started off with 20 chickens. We're down to 15 chickens. This has been a bad year for us because there's been a fox that's been getting through our super strong defense of 2 dogs who like to lounge instead of protect. So we've lost some chickens. But how many eggs do you get? Do you guys on each day? How many do you have? I like the AM, but would fit in at any time, really. Yeah, well, here's what could happen. If you don't catch the evening one, you can rewatch it in the morning. Because what I'm really working hard on is making these good for podcasts, which means they're good for just audio. You could just listen to the show and get everything. But what you could do is just replay that video. And maybe we could have the replay up in time for the morning. But I'm looking at the numbers and not a single person said 6 a.m. yet. Not one yet. It's my preferred time. But this shows more about making sure that we can get the message out. That's a more important thing to me. And then I can see how doing the morning show is preferable because you get to greet all of your listeners at the start of the day. Yeah, that's my thing too. Yeah, I want to say good morning. I want to say good morning. I want to get you started off on a upbeat but intelligent and rational perspective. We're not here to, put kid gloves on and make people feel good, but we're certainly here to take a look at the hard issues and look at it in an optimistic way and a realistic way. And I think we definitely would be able to do that. So maybe a short morning one just to fulfill my desire to do something in the morning, to say good morning to you all. And then I can bookend it at the end of the day with a good night. So I wake you up in the morning. At the end of the day, we say goodnight to each other on a longer show. But what that would give me then is some options, right? So if I have a guest that is early and wants to do that, I can do that. If I have an evening one, we can do that. But I certainly can't do 2 shows a day for 2 hours. So 2 hours in the evening, maybe a half an hour in the morning, a quick coffee, that kind of thing. I love you, Ellen. What's the freedom? What's this freedom? I love you, Ellen. And how's Gina? We got to watch out for Gina. Is that coming along? And it was hilarious. Last night, I did an impersonation to my wife, and I actually thought it was pretty good. But it's an impersonation of an impersonator. So, Seamus from the Tim Pool Show? Wow. I'm trying to work on him. I might be the only commentator that does Seamus from Timcast. He's a pretty cool guy, by the way. So he's very religious and he's very conservative and he has a lot to say. So if you're not a Tim Pool fan, you don't watch that show, check it out. It's actually not bad. Not bad at all. And we got Eleanor. It just feels this when we aren't united as Canadians to save our country. I think we're silently united, okay? I think the loud ones that tell you we're not united are the ones that you're hearing a lot from. But there's people like us who want to stay united and want to work towards a united Canada. And Eleanor, you're one of them, right? So we're out there. So don't lose any hope or keep the faith. We definitely are the silent majority. We're getting 2 dozen, but the heat and some older chickens slow down a bit. Cool. And do you sell them? Because you certainly don't eat that many eggs. Unless you store them for the winter and maybe you pickle some of them. You do something with them. Because we're trying to learn what we can do, whether or not we're going to keep the chickens for winter or stockpile or something. But yeah, we got about 20 and I think we're getting a strong dozen each day now. Right, folks, we're down to the last 5 minutes, so get your last little comments in. Happy to take a look at them. I do want to mention that later today at some point, keep an eye on my Twitter because we got a reaction video that was created to the Pastor Adam video. This gentleman is a disabled person that basically is homeless, but he's got a home, but he's definitely one of the marginalized people in this world that we're supposed to be protecting, but this current government does not. And he watched that video and he related to it tremendously. He escaped from Quebec and the hardships that were there, moved to Ontario. He now hangs out at the Hill. He goes by Mr. Green Thumbs on, well, I think he's on YouTube. Yeah, so yeah, he's on YouTube as Mr. Green Thumbs, and he's also on our Discord server. But he made a 40-minute reaction video. It is deep. It is deep. I don't know if I'll play it on here. I might play segments of it, but keep an eye on my Twitter, and if you don't see it today, I'll definitely let you know about it tomorrow. But it's well worth watching. It's very deep. It's very, very deep. A reminder, we have the lieutenant, because they use military words in the PPC. We have the lieutenant of Western Canada and the Northwest Territories. Kelly, I think it's Lorenz. Again, bad with names. But Kelly is going to be here tomorrow, the entire show. So we're going to be talking to him about what has changed in the PPC over the last year since I was really looking hard at them. Where are they headed? What's Max's goal with Manitoba? So it should be a really, really good conversation. If you like the PPC, you may enjoy it. If you dislike the PPC, you also may enjoy it, because what you're going to be learning is what changes have they made since you last took a good look at them. It is one of the more promising parties. If you have to vote for a party, PPC would be where I would be looking. I'm still, of course, independent, and I think if you have a strong independent candidate, that's what you should be always looking at. And if you don't have a strong independent candidate, you look for a strong candidate. And if that's in the PPC, then that's good news. But we'll have him all day tomorrow in the morning. We're not going to be changing that on him, but we are scheduled for the morning. Another quick look, and 50% of you are saying evening now. It's getting pretty strong. In fact, second place is afternoon. Third is late morning, and no votes for early morning. So maybe I made a wrong choice by having such an early morning show. But happy to make a change if that works for you all. Ellen, you may have the last say here. We share with neighbors and also some coworkers of husbands request them and donate to the... You got to phonetically put that out there for me, Ellen. Murgatroyd Fund. Cool. And we also sell, a little bit of an income from the eggs. We have people that love free-range eggs. Has nothing in them. They're good eggs. And then also known as the feed cost offset fund. Oh, cool. Okay, cool. I like how you are contributing to your community that way. Lowering costs, kind of like a barter system. Neighbors should be working this way. Don't let Klaus hear that. Neighbors cooperated. It's a sin. We must stop. They must listen. Yeah. Okay, folks. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. It was one of those different ones where we did a recording and we had to play it, and I did my best to try and clean up the video a bit. But I did leave that one part. Actually, it turns out there was two parts: one in the first one and one in the third one, where there was disconnecting, because I missed it. That's the honest truth. But it was funny to see the Rothschild or Rockefeller one. Every time I said the name, it cut. But it was a lot of fun. But thank you all for being with me today. I missed my kids. They left early. You missed it. But I now have myself as they head to the city to take care of a bunch of stuff. And Brenda's saying, what do you got here? Have a great day. You too, Brenda. I believe you're in the you're in my neck of the woods. You're in Alberta. But let me know on Facebook. Okay. Well, thank you all very much. And I really, really enjoyed today's episode. I really enjoyed talking to you. It felt a little bit intimate today. I had a lot of extra time to do other things while the video was playing, including thinking about changing the time for this video. And we got one last comment. Oh, Brenda's in Ontario. I got a lot of Ontarios. So you guys really like freedom too. And you like the messages that are coming out of Alberta. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. All right, folks. We've come to the end. You're going to have to say goodbye to JJ, it's my son. You're going to have to say goodbye to Jason for 24 hours. We'll see you all soon. And remember, God bless.